We are recording with Dr. Peter McCullough on Friday, December 15th, 2023 at 1:05 p.m. Eastern Time. And I have to apologize to everybody. I have a bit of a stuffy nose. But as I was just telling Dr. McCullough, my mom said on the phone the other day, she said, text Dr. McCullough and tell him that your mother misses his voice on your show. So I did. That wasn't a lie. And she actually said last night on the phone, she said to make sure to remind you that your mother loves him very much. So Dr. McCullough, my mother loves you. I hope not more than me. That it's a bone of contention that we can maybe get into later. But Dr. McCullough, please introduce yourself for all the new listeners as I post the live link. And yeah, how are you doing?
I'm delighted. Thanks, Miss Carrigan. Great to be back on the show. Yeah, I'm one of the few guests that Tommy's met in person. He came to Austin, was at a shoot at the Alex Jones studio. And I'm in practicing internist and cardiologist in Dallas, Texas. I'm in practice seeing patients most days now this week, and except for Friday now, I have for media day. So I'm going to do some media shoots today and help update the audiences across so many independent media platforms. One of the things we've learned, Tommy, is that independent media, shows like yours, are so important because the whole world understands now that mainstream media, even live feeds, social media, it's tainted. It's tainted actually by censorship.
And that's what you've been getting into on Twitter, which I've been banned from, but your Twitter is in the description as well as your Substack in your book with John Leake, is talking about how mainstream media is now, you can see the shift of to where nothing bad is happening. Obviously, I think we've all seen over the past couple of years of nothing bad is happening to it's not as bad as you think. And I think that's what you've been getting into on Twitter, which is now allowed, is that I think your tweet was the skewing of vaccine safety vignettes. Could you maybe go into that?
Well, what we've seen is that even when a vignette of a vaccine injury is portrayed in the media, there's some type of casting, some type of editorializing. We see it in the medical literature too. So, for instance, there'll be a paper in the medical literature describing, fatal myocarditis. So, a horrific situation. Someone takes the vaccine and then they die within a few days. The heart's damaged. It's clear COVID-19 vaccine-induced myocarditis. And then the manuscript will say, well, vaccines have saved millions of lives, but we're going to report this case of a side effect. And then in the end, we reiterate that the benefits far outweigh the risks of vaccines. And Tommy, this editorializing of it is hard to know. Do the authors really mean it? Do they feel it's necessary as like a gating in order to get past the censorship checks? They have to put in these unsupported statements. But it is confusing to the public. When they reporting a safety vignette, you might as well just report it. No need to try to cast it in terms of risk-benefit ratio.
I think you and I have talked about it before, actually, by you and I think I have yelled about the HBO series Chernobyl in terms of truth and its analogies, or I guess metaphorical representations of from radiation. But this does come back to it is in the show HBO, the HBO series, is there's a head KGB guy, and he's in the basement of Chernobyl, and I think it was in the trailer, but the top comment on YouTube points it out, and he goes, we must rise to this occasion, we must do what is right for the people, and then he gets very serious. He goes, cut the phone lines, stop the spread of misinformation. Nobody leaves. And then he comes back and he goes, we will all have glory. And the top comment is pointing out how in the beginning of this 10-second sentence, he just has that old man sort of that wisdom, that cherubic, almost Christmas-like love. And then he delivers the pill. And then he finishes it with the same sort of smile. And the top comment points out that much like a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, is the poison is right in the center. And it makes me think of that is it starts, like you just said, it starts with, the vaccines have saved millions of lives. This is a testament to science, which is the new religion. And then they sandwich it in there really quick just like, my dad would always, give me the medicine when I was little. He put it in vanilla ice cream. And in the center is myocarditis, something beyond evil, myocarditis in an infant. And then it follows up with, but it's all good. Do you think that they know? Do you think that there's any, I guess, I don't know, self-reflection? Or do you think it's just,
I guess we're getting more evidence of actually premeditation,
yeah,
Tommy. I mean, I think one of the clear examples of this is the Trusted News Initiative. So the BBC on December 10th, 2020. Now that's a day before the December 11th, 2020 FDA VRBPAC meeting, where the initial Pfizer vaccine was emergency use authorized. So the day before, the BBC comes out with a broad announcement on the internet saying that they are going to be working with all the major media outlets to combat dangerous COVID vaccine misinformation. Now, how did they know about misinformation? The vaccines hadn't even come out yet. They had not even gone into public use, yet they were preparing. And we know in Event 201, there was a big emphasis on misinformation and disinformation, even, that's before the vaccines, before the COVID virus pandemic really comes out and comes into full play. So what we've learned is that misinformation and disinformation are propaganda terms, and they've been kind of pre-planned and put into use. It came into the English literature about 1500, used extensively in Nazi Germany by the Office of Propaganda by Goebbels. So if anybody uses the word misinformation or disinformation, they are taking this right out of the Nazi playbook. And then it was Word of the Year by Washington Post. Misinformation was 2018 in partisan politics. That's long before COVID. But now in my field in medicine, there's conferences on battling misinformation. The American Board of Internal Medicine says its top priority isn't to cure cancer or heart disease, but it's to battle misinformation. And so we've seen propaganda terms, and those are basically, allegations leveraged against someone, meaning that if you can cast somebody as spreading misinformation, though, therefore you hold information. So it's basically a power dynamic that this is now being levered against the American people, and certainly being used against physicians like myself. It doesn't exist. Misinformation and disinformation don't exist. There simply are, clinical observations, scientific data, and then we interpret it.
Back to what you said about meeting guests in person. Yeah, I've met you. I've met one of the Delta Force guys, Dale Comstock, and I've met another guy, a Marine combatant, Don. Don actually took me to the hospital after getting a concussion because I was drinking with Dale about a year and a half ago. But hanging out with you.
Was this the deadly fall in the stairwell incident, Tommy?
It was a window well, which
the window well. Yeah, those window
well.
wells are steep and there's no guardrails around them. And you're way up there. Existed. Tommy, aren't you way up there in Maine?
I am now, but this was in Maryland. This was last summer. I didn't know window wells existed. Yes, and I fell in one and cracked my head, and they brought me to the hospital. And luckily for me, I had actual Iraq War veteran combatants, because I kept saying, "Am I going to die?" And they're looking at me like I was not a real man, which I suppose I'm not in their eyes. They're like, "You're fine. You're not going to die." And I was like, "My mom's going to be so angry at you." But
Tommy, do you know what a concussion actually is?
Well, I remember texting you, actually. I think I texted you when I was in the ER, and I asked what was going on. And I think your words were, it was a bruise on the brain.
Right. So if you've ever had a deep bruise in your thigh or another area, and you see kind of that purplish and it's sore deep, that's what a concussion is. It's actually like, some blood that's extravasated from capillaries into the parenchymal tissue of the brain. We can see this now on high resolution MRI, and no wonder it hurts. No wonder there's headache. No wonder there's nausea, vomiting, light sensitivity, and the fact that the symptoms can last months, sometimes even years. So it is a bruise on the brain. And unfortunately, we really, our brain is protected in the calvarium, the skull, that we really do have to take important steps. But Tommy, I wanted to bring up and get your reaction to, did you see the most recent Republican presidential debate on News Nation and what happened to Vivek Ramaswamy?
Was that the live mic, the urination? I would like to say that I've been pushing for urination acceptance for the last couple of years of me going to the bathroom during podcasts. So I think Vivek should maybe contact me in terms of how to control this crisis.
No, Tommy, I wasn't mentioning a trip to
Oh,
the
all right.
This had to do with censorship. This is very important. So Megyn Kelly asks him a question regarding the vaccines. And then Ramaswamy, is starting to do his homework, and he digs back to 1986 under President Reagan, the Vaccine Injury Compensation Act, and basically providing broad liability against vaccine manufacturers for the routine vaccines given in the United States. In fact, all vaccines. And Ramaswamy says, well, one of the things he'd do when he got in power is he'd repeal that act, meaning that the pharmaceutical companies have to be able to stand behind their products and have liability for injury damages like they would with any other drug. And what's interesting is, do you know, at these events, and I've spoken at many of them myself, it's not exactly live. There's a delay in the feed. And Tommy, somebody was on that feed and they saw him starting to go answer. And Tommy, they cut it.
Yeah.
They cut it and said, we're going to take a break. They obviously didn't have any commercials ready. So it was just a screen that says, we're taking a break. And it was for 8 minutes until he was done with his answer. Then they restored the feed. But the reason why this is important, that means a government agent, somebody from this biopharmaceutical complex that we describe in our book, one of the various NGOs like the Gates Foundation, or maybe even the pharmaceutical companies themselves, they are on these feeds and they have control of a live broadcast feed to the public, censoring out anything that could be potentially damaging to this vaccine agenda. I mean, it was a stunning display of live censorship of a feed where we think we're receiving the information live and we're not.
It's a stunning display of pure power. To cycle back, I now realize we were not talking about the urination. But also to go back, the bruise on the brain, the lasting effects, that was last May, I think. Today's December 15th. I can't drink alcohol. Something happened where I'm an Irish guy, as you are. Something happened where it cracked my head, and if I drink it, I have a panic attack. But that's not the point. The point that I was getting at with bringing it up is I've met you, and I was with my little brother, and you and I were talking about, how long the fight is. And I remember you looked at me and you said that you're relentless. And to tie that into Vivek is, I think we all supposed the power was there, but we're starting to see the naked face of it, which in a sense is good. They don't want to show you that they have power over this. The fact that something like the Twitter files, those were never meant to come out. It was never meant to be, Twitter was never meant to be bought by somebody else. The fact that we're seeing this, and I know this is maybe a twist on it, it might be swinging for the fences, but in terms of optimism, I think it is good. It's good in that we're seeing it now. When you see the naked face of, it's like when you see like a BS call at a football game, right? It's so clear that there is a conflict of interest, that it's not genuine, that I think there is a positivity to it, and that more people are seeing it. So an 8-minute break, that's not normal. So as bad as it is, and as you say NGO, I would say most likely probably direct backdoor from one of the 17 intelligence agencies that we know. Yeah. I would say it's direct government control. Could you maybe go into that a little more in terms of?
Yeah, but Tommy, wait, so I agree with you. It does seem like it's probably government agents that are sitting on these fees, but what agency do you think it is?
Well, jump right into it. I mean, So NSA is normally pretty hands off. You can go into James Bamford's book, Shadow Factory, the ultra secret post 9/11 NSA. You can go into the actual surgery, and I'm kind of going in autopilot now. There's an actual physical surgery where they went into several of the large nodes on the East Coast and the West Coast, where the transatlantic and I guess trans-Pacific cables actually come to the United States. They went in and added these not only did they add these orange doors where it's not one knob, it's like several interlocking mechanisms. They added doors to these private companies, and behind the doors, which are bulletproof, blast proof, they actually put they said they're like clear plastic splitters, and they described it and I think they might have even brought in a surgeon in terms of delicacy to where they clamped it on and literally split the cables so that one would go into an NSA server and one would go back to, I guess, the text that you and I received. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is that was 22 years ago. It wasn't declassified for, I think, 15 years. So the reason I brought that all up is that sounds insane until it becomes declassified. So what agency is it? I would say it's maybe not an agency. I think it's probably SRA, which I only learned about a couple months ago. The Signature Reduction Army, which is a branch or a subgroup of Pentagon that I don't know enough about, but it's, I think, the largest unofficial organization in the Pentagon. I want to say it's 60 to 80,000 employees of actual human shills, not bots, but actual human shills, which I'm a conspiracy prone person, but even I always thought it was BS when people would say in a Reddit thread 15 years ago, you're a shill. I'd be like, there's no shills here. Apparently it is the largest sub branch of the Pentagon to actual so there's what bots can do, right? It's where you post links, do whatever. But actual human people to go in, because we have not reached the, I suppose, the Turing test threshold for bots, you would have actual people go in there, almost the antithesis of me. You would have a Tommy somewhere day in and day out arguing with people. So who did it? If I had to put money on it, I would say the Signature Reduction Army, the SRA of the Pentagon, but obviously that's speculation.
But isn't it interesting that they have listeners, and I bet it's not AI. I bet it's real people.
Oh, sure.
Listening, Tommy. And as soon as they saw something threatening to this vaccine agenda, they immediately made the decision to cut it. And, the interesting thing is, what did they think? Did they think that we wouldn't notice that they could splice it together? They obviously didn't. People caught the real feed. So people immediately got this out on Twitter and said, listen, this is what Ramaswamy said. Ramaswamy later on said, oh my Lord, they cut out 8 minutes of my response. This a presidential debate is a public forum. And I agree with you. Unless, we find out otherwise, we ought to assume that our own government is censoring public forums to the United States. And Americans are becoming very distrustful of the intelligence community.
Yes, as well as they should be. 8 minutes is wild. And it's also, I would say 100% it's human. It's not AI. I just finished a book and I didn't know the author died, and that made me upset. It was by Edmund Morris about Teddy Roosevelt. And I mean, if you want to talk about the original, I guess, quote unquote, swamp drainer before Trump, I mean, when did he become president? 1901. He goes into it, and that's a guy that, from the start, in that he was proudly a moralist. He was a Boy Scout in his own terms. He was a prude, right? He had two sexual partners in his life, but he just did the right thing, and he did it with gusto. And there's something about it that was so inspiring to me. I just finished it, I think 2 days ago, in terms of doing the right thing. But he would always end up bringing up somewhere in Congress or somewhere, screaming at somebody when he was the New York police commissioner. He used to sneak up on actual police officers. This is like 1890. Would be like smoking cigars and drinking on the west side of Manhattan. He would sneak up. They were actually selling little plastic monocles so that kids could be like Teddy. But he would always talk about how I mean, it's not a new saying, but the truth is built on stone and lies are built on sand. And that what we're seeing right now is a very slow motion dissolving of what we have come to accept as the old guard. So I do come back to, I think it's good that even the most gullible person can see 8 minutes missing in a presidential debate, and they're aware that it's one thing if you and I, like we have been doing for the last 3 years, are talking about vaccine misinformation, but they expect it from us, right? Those are just whatever. As it bleeds into the mainstream, I do think it's a positive force. Maybe I'm learning that, but could you maybe comment on the positivity of it?
Well, you're right. I guess it's exposure. It's exposing censorship. Fortunately, people caught it. They played it back. Ramaswamy was informed. He tweeted about it. We amplified it. I've amplified it across my Twitter channels. Many other people did too. Exposing like real life censorship, the fact that human beings are on these feeds is terribly important. Many times it's in the shadows. And someone like Teddy Roosevelt, he took things head on and he really took his hits. You probably read about it. He was giving a speech and a would-be assassin actually shot him in the shoulder.
Yeah.
And he's bleeding through his white shirt. And he looks right at the crowd. He says, "It'll take more than that to kill a Rough Rider." And he finishes his speech, Tommy. He finishes his speech. I mean, this is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. These characters in American history, who are the characters of today that we'll look back and see? It's going to be people who have these indomitable forces, these a presence among them where others will simply shrink away. That assassin never took a second shot. Just probably stunned with the strength of Teddy Roosevelt. But what we've learned is there is, in a sense, a hell-bent mission on worldwide mass vaccination. We're 3 years into this COVID-19 vaccine debacle. Not a single country has pulled it off the market. A good Twitter account to follow is Mary Talley Bowden. She's a Stanford-trained ear, nose, and throat doctor in Houston, top of the line. She was top of her medical school class, mother, multiple kids, did everything right, treated patients with COVID, stood up to the hospitals and censorship. She sued the FDA with Paul Merrick and Robert Apter, and actually got the FDA to disclose that, you can treat COVID with ivermectin. Well, she summarized today the growing list of leaders who are calling for removal of the COVID-19 vaccines off the market. The leaders, talk to elected leaders, and every day that list is growing. So, I think that's bona fide progress. It takes courage. Our leaders are not terribly courageous. There's no checkbox when you vote for courage, but they're going to have courage to stand up against this ideology, this very strong ideology that exists. That you'll take a vaccine, you will not question it. It'll be mandated upon you, and you'll take shot after shot after shot. Tommy, do you know if somebody is actually following the government narrative, they're coming up on their 10th COVID-19 vaccine?
I thought it stopped at 5.
No, it's 10. It's every 6 months. Memorial Hermann Hospital in Houston announced today that they are dropping their vaccine mandate. They held this vaccine mandate all the way through. And they said the only reason they dropped it, Tommy, is because of Texas Senate Bill 7, which was making COVID-19 vaccine mandates among private employers in Texas illegal. They could still do it, but they'd have to pay an astronomical fine per employee. So they're dropping it. So the first part of the letter says we're dropping it because we have to by law. And then the second part of the letter is we're convinced the COVID-19 vaccines save lives. They allowed us to keep our doors open and save countless others. It basically was just a fraudulent set of paragraphs. They didn't have to say that. They can just say they're dropping the mandate. And what we're seeing is that's called a deceptive trade practice. And now we've learned that that Attorney General Ken Paxton is suing Pfizer using the long arm of Texas law, accusing Pfizer of violating the deceptive trade practices, either Pfizer directly, Weber Shandwick, which is their PR marketing firm, or maybe other agents or actors like Mario Harmon.
I think maybe a note of humility that both myself and you could take from Teddy Roosevelt, and not you individually, I mean the larger you, is I think we all probably think we know of Teddy Roosevelt is just, yeah, rough rider, nonstop work. I mean, when I think his horse died, and he would walk 13 miles to go see his would-be wife every day. Total animal. But as he got older, he got his experience. He was in a war. He was in the Spanish-American War, and as he got older, when he was 41, he said he finally started to understand the importance, a deeply religious man, of standing back and looking at politics and world powers as a kaleidoscope. And he would say, you can put in all the work, you can do everything, you can till the garden, you can put in the seeds, you can whatever. But sometimes you just had to sit back and wait until the seemingly opposite images slowly lined up, like when you're at the optometrist, right? And sometimes you just have to wait. And it wasn't until he was giving a speech that one day he was doing a campaign speech, and a journalist said that the crowd looked like a kaleidoscope, and he realized he was right, because all the streamers, the ticker tape, and that's when he realized that he was on the right path. And obviously he later became president. But in terms of the kaleidoscope nature, do you think that's what we're slowly approaching? Right, you and I have done God knows how many interviews. You've done, who knows how many interviews. You've probably done more interviews about COVID than I have done podcasts. But there is a certain point where, and it doesn't mean to take your foot off the gas, but there is a point where you have to wait for the images to just line up, right? And when the kaleidoscope lines up, there's nothing you can do to block it. Right? The image is stunning. Do you think that's what we're coming up on? Is that hopium? Am I smoking hopium? Am I wishing that it was getting better?
It certainly is colorful imagery, meaning that, so many different points of view are coming together and thoughts are congealing on a particular concept. I do think in many ways, Tommy, it's one by one. I had someone in my office yesterday from Canada, and she had taken 5 shots, and we got into a conversation about COVID vaccine safety. And it was interesting. She had actually never had a conversation on vaccine safety, ever. And she said, she goes, vaguely in the back of my mind, I had a sense that these weren't safe, but I really haven't seen anything directly that told me that these weren't safe. And it just showed you that her sources of information, her news channels, are sufficiently filtered to where she actually never really heard the direct information. And I mean, I laid it out for her. She didn't argue. She said she wanted to follow me. And, on Instagram, it's nearly impossible to follow me unless I follow that person first. So Instagram has me pretty well locked down. I'm invisible to her on Instagram, because I asked her, I said, what social media are you on? She got my Instagram. So then, I got her locked in. Now, on Instagram, Substack, Twitter, I am in the tens of thousands of postings. And you're right. I've given more media interviews, more analyses on COVID-19, actually, in terms of topics, than anybody in the world. So I exceed all the presidential candidates in terms of media time and analysis and written analysis. I exceed almost every state senator or congressman that I can think of, or any even individual media person. Just simply have more exposure. A media person, has a show 1 hour a day. I'll have 3 or 4 today. My max is about 16 in a day. That would far exceed Tucker Carlson or just anybody out there. So the advantage of being a medical expert in the time of a medical controversy and being highly published and being clinically relevant, seeing patients, that advantage is unmatched. Other people have come out and said, well, I never saw COVID, but I know something, I have an opinion. Others have, come out with some type of a background to try to make a point, but nothing is as powerful as somebody in practice seeing patients, someone actively publishing in the peer-reviewed literature, and then that same person being in the media and being able to explain in a very understandable and trusted manner what's going on. And that's exactly what I've done. I filled that important void. And I think it's very, very important. I really don't rely on others. It's not like I have to wait for someone else to agree with my analysis. I put my analysis out there and I stand behind it. That's the reason why the Courageous Discourse Substack is so popular. People are on that every day. They use the graphical abstracts and the various vignettes to help them form their opinions. People are always asking for evidence backup on it. Substack's such a very flexible publication platform where there's various links and abilities to even search prior postings. So people say, well, where's this paper on this topic? I said, well, I've reviewed it. It's on my Substack. We can find it in the search bar. That's very useful. The other thing is getting different viewpoints across the world, since this is a global problem. And I know you've done this, I've done this, but on my show, America Out Loud Talk Radio, McCullough Report, I bring in people from all over the world, get their feedback, get their perspectives, and we get that out in audio format. And the thing I've done that I think is so important, and our public health experts didn't do it, most other media people don't do it, is I've been available to the world for questions. And they can come through written format, through Substack or Twitter or other social media. And then they come in verbally through America Out Loud Talk Radio, McCullough Report. So I do that on Pulse, which is Wednesday afternoons with Malcolm Out Loud, who's host of the platform. So Malcolm and I cover a topic, and then we do the back end of the program answering questions. And I tell you, the questions and the answers are the most popular part of it. And we had a great one, Tommy, this week. It just aired on Wednesday about Chat GPT. Have you heard about that?
Yes. What's the question and answer about it?
One of my listeners said, Dr. McCullough, you haven't done anything on Chat GPT, which is true. I'm just a kind of a slow adopter, and this is an artificial intelligence program. And so what my listener did is he did an exercise. And he said, he asked Chat GPT, how many people have died from the COVID-19 vaccines? And then Chat GPT answers, well, the COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective, and side effects are very rare. And he keeps refining the question. And Chat GPT goes into basically a vaccine promotional commercial each time. And he did this exhaustively. And he basically proved that Chat GPT is a government propaganda tool.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is. not saying that to you, but I mean, of course it is. But there's a meta theme in terms of in the fact that it always does come back to you, the individual. I mean, I remember today is December 15th, 10 years ago, actually 10 years ago today, I graduated college, but I do remember studying for the MCAT, and I had enough money to buy exam crackers, the Berkeley Review, the Princeton Review, Kaplan, all the books, right? Thousands of dollars of books. And I remember going through them each because, as an OCD individual, and seeing that so much overlapping information, but that there was unique parts of each book. And I wanted to know, how come nobody had made an exhaustive, all-encompassing, all-expensive MCAT review. And after a couple months, I finally realized that no one was going to do it. But because of my own clinical OCD, I had to do it. So I ended up making, I don't know, it's like 1,000, maybe 1,500 PowerPoint slides was the ultimate MCAT review, and I posted it online, and it helped a lot of people. But in terms of when you know something is the right thing to do, because the reason for this is I had a friend from Africa and I had a friend from South Korea, and neither had the money. They're first generation immigrants, and I made it and I gave it to them, and blah blah blah, whatever makes me look good, sure. But when your heart's in something, you can finally focus on it's what I have to do. So ChatGPT, which AI, you could say is a pseudo god, right? It's we don't believe in heaven, but we want to build utopia. People don't believe in God, but they want to create a technological God. Do you think even that is maybe pushing people towards realizing that no one's coming to get you? The point of me saying all of this, no one's coming to get you. I mean, you said in one of our early episodes, it might have been the episode that got me banned from YouTube, the medical Super Bowl, which I don't know, episode 400 of you and I. You were talking about how this is the big game, right? You've been prepping for this your whole life. And I would go one step further and say it's more of the Olympics. It's beyond the Super Bowl, which is, America's. It's worldwide. And like the final showdown of many things, it's not what you think it's going to be. And I know I'm all over the place with this rant, but I mean, I just, I don't know, maybe a month ago, I finished another book on Eisenhower. And he would talk about that too, about how his final service to the United States wasn't some glorious grab the machine gun and go storm the Nazi, I guess, pillbox, but rather it was to set up a series of bunkers, and that it's not what you think it's going to be, but the very thing you do ends up being the most, I guess, beneficial to the nation you're from. Can you touch on that? No, I'm all over the place with that, but can you maybe touch on that in terms of it's never what you think it's going to be. It's always some weird abstract, I don't know how to put it in words.
Right. I think what you're trying to say is that what one aspires to do, wealth, fame, power, that it's probably not really what you want to do, or ultimately what one would value the most. I mean, so many people in the end are seeking purpose in their life. And, I remember I went on Tucker Carlson in May of 2021 on this long program in his studio. And that kind of set him off on a 2-year journey, investigating, raising questions, and going against this false narrative, largely on the vaccines, but he obviously took on other issues. And it led to his, in a sense, termination at Fox, although he's still being paid until after the elections. And he kind of asked, "Is this worth it?" And I said, if I've helped one person, it's worth it. And you could look at the TPC podcast and say, listen, if your podcast has helped one person, has it helped somebody, understand something? And the neat thing about independent media is that it's so available now that we all can be helped. Let me give you an example. This morning, I was sitting in bed, we're having coffee with my wife, and I was just kind of flipping through social media, and I noticed that there was a podcast by someone named Rebecca Hardy, who I really respect. She is terrific. She's a great scientist, but she understands politics, and she leads the Texting Vaccine Choice. Now, this is a group that's largely just advocating for people to have free choice on their vaccines. It's not anti-vax. They're just saying, listen, we just want free choice. We don't want this mandated on us. And Texas Vaccine Choice came up long before COVID. It had to do with the routine childhood vaccine schedules. And Rebecca Hardy was interviewing a veterinarian. His name is Messian Nair. He's got a French name. And he's a holistic veterinarian, Tommy. And it's probably about a 15-minute interview, but he actually goes through the vaccines, the common vaccines that dogs and cats would get, and then what they really need and why. And, our dog was laying with us in bed. My wife and I are under the covers, and we're listening to this. And I said, this is a very useful interview. Rebecca took the effort to interview him. and he kind of laid it out for me. And so what I quickly did is I looked up the various organisms to make sure I was right about this. And then I retweeted it out, and to my followers, I said, listen, this is a really, if you own a pet, particularly a dog, this is a really valuable interview. And what this holistic veterinarian said is that, listen, it's compelling. The dogs do need a parvovirus shot. He goes, without it, he goes, there will be canine fatalities for sure. And he says they also need the paramyxovirus distemper shot. He said, for sure. He says, you know, it's too prevalent. You know, we're going to have loss of animals. And, you know, by law, they need the rabies shot. Now, the rabies shot in some states is, or even some jurisdictions, is every year. Others is every 3 years. And he said, listen, these things last 3 years. And then Rebecca said, well, what about all the other shots? He says, you know, they really don't need them. He said, one approach is the dogs go out to dog parks, they walk in the woods, they go on walks around the block, they get exposed to stuff. He goes, if you come in and you get an annual titers, you can actually get a multiplex titers against the common canine illnesses, for instance, is you can figure out what additional vaccines they would need to help them. But I thought it was a super useful interview. My wife thought it was a useful interview because it gave us practical information about something that we honestly never analyzed before. I never really analyzed the vaccines that my dog was getting when my wife takes the dog to the veterinarian for the routine visits. But the reason why I'm saying this is a practical piece of information. It wouldn't come up on a public service announcement on TV. It wouldn't come out any other way. And here Rebecca is using Twitter, which, you know, has a huge audience, and then we can repost it. And I can, if I think it's valuable, I want my followers to follow. And it is wonderful to see independent media coming. This is very important, Tommy, in Australia. They have some draconian legislation coming in to effect January 1st. It's essentially going to try to wipe out anything that's not following a government narrative. And then we're going to see how independent media fights back. But it's absolutely terrific. Tommy, I wanted to ask you, you know, do you have any feelings or reflections about Alex Jones getting back on Twitter, but still Tommy Carrigan, Dave Janda, and a couple of the other, you know, really deep opponents are still held at bay?
I'm a huge fan of him being back on Twitter, and I was actually just on the phone with someone before this podcast about that. Not to completely dodge that, I'll come back to it, but in the last couple of minutes I have you, I wanted to come back to the importance of the animal vaccination. For different reasons. I was very excited about that, what you just said. You don't use any, not you, but there are none of the buzzwords. COVID, myocarditis, spike proteins. It's almost, you know, when you're like third grade, you go to the school counselor, they get out the puppet, and they're like, well, Tommy, I'm not going to say that you took Ryan's lunch, but, you know, Bob the dinosaur and Kevin the pterodactyl, they want to maybe talk to you about stealing each other's, you know, whatever. And you're like, yeah, I kind of get it. There's some importance in that, what you just said about, hey, this has nothing to do with COVID-19, you know, the World Economic Forum, Davos. But maybe your animal doesn't need X, Y, and Z. Maybe they go to the dog park and they get what they need to get. I think there's some importance in that maybe we can look at. And, you know, you wouldn't put your dog in danger, so why would you put yourself in danger? But back to Alex Jones, that's kind of crazy, right? I was doing a stream with someone last week, and they said, you know, I don't like Eli, I don't trust him, but if he brings Alex Jones back on, that's major street cred. I was just on the phone, you know, up the minutes leading up to this, is somebody saying, what do you think about that? How did they get back on? What are the machinations behind the scene? How are the gears rolling? Now, why am I not back on? I don't know. That's I don't know. You know, what is the sound of one hand clapping? I have no idea. I'm not on Reddit, iTunes, Twitter, YouTube, and Patreon. Those are all things I'm not allowed to post to. Whatever. Something's twisting, right? I mean, ratio, right? You're a big guy on Twitter. You're almost at 1 million subscribers. ratioing is right. If you tweet, I'm the best looking guy in the world, you might get 19,000 comments and 2 likes, or you might get 19,000 likes and 2 comments. The latter is a good ratio. When more people just give you a thumbs up without giving a comment on it, that's a good ratio. So many people commented on the Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones podcast about bringing Alex back on, and everyone that opposed it got a negative ratio. I think more people. That's actually a very, in all the movies. I know I'm jumping around again. Like Day After Tomorrow, whenever there's a big tidal wave coming, it always starts with some remote Arctic station, and they're monitoring buoys out in the middle of the Atlantic, and they're like, sir, like 3 buoys just went down, and then 5 buoys just went down, and it's because this massive thing is coming over the horizon. It always starts kind of the dun 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 dun, right? It builds up and up and up. That's kind of crazy that you see the average person kind of giving Alex time of day. That just 5 years ago, he's the crazy, conspiracy theorist, and now people are looking at it and they're going, what is he saying that's wrong? How is he incorrect? What do you think about
Well, I think those are fair questions. How is he incorrect? I've replaced the term conspiracy theory, Tommy, with rational theory, that he's a rational theorist, meaning he has theories, he has ideas like we all do about what we're observing in life, but they're discussable, they're testable. This term conspiracy theory, it's going to go out. I give a lot of credit to Monica Schmidt from Australia. She's published her book called Cell 22. So she's been a COVID policy dissident in Australia, spent some jail time. And she made a very nice video. It's out there. Maybe I'll tweet it out again today. It's called The Rational Theorist. And it actually does feature me in the movie. And, they come together from all walks of life in the end and say, listen, we all have theories regarding what we're seeing, what we're interpreting, and it's natural. We need to discuss them, and we can do it in a rational fashion. We don't need to denigrate people by saying they're conspiracy theorists. We don't need to try to, establish a power dynamic by saying someone is spreading misinformation or disinformation. We simply just need to discuss issues. So to the extent that your podcast and others just simply discusses issues and gets it out there, which I think you do a great job. And you're probably one of the great young historians of our time. I think you should appeal to Twitter, appeal to Musk, tag me, tag Alex Jones. You've met both of us. To make your case to get back on Twitter, because I know it's you, Alex, Dave Janda, and just a few others now that are banned from Twitter. But Tommy, did you see what Alex told Tucker about what's going to happen once he gets on Twitter?
No, I saw the timestamps when it first posted it. I just remember glancing. It was like, presidential election, and I guess the closing thought was whiskey. What did he say?
He said, listen. He goes, they're letting me back on Twitter as part of, in a sense, choreography. The globalists are going to use this as a reason to shut down the entire platform. So Alex is predicting that Twitter, the entire platform, is going to be shut down. And, I've independently predicted, I think Substack is going to get shut down. If the globalist powers are as strong as they are, this legislation in Australia, do you know in France, Tommy, you can't even get on Rumble.
No, you can't.
You can't get on Rumble. You're going to start to see this now, this ability to shut off people's connectedness. And then we're just going to have to see the survivability of independent platforms. That's the reason why I'm very diverse. So, I'm in Substack, I'm on Twitter, Getter, True Social, Telegram, America Out Loud, another independent platform, TPC podcast. You're going to have to keep looking for, your unassailable platforms and keep your diversity up there. Tommy, listen, this has been a great interview. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish Miss Carrigan a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year. God bless all of you. Thank you so much for having me on the program.
Yes, sir. I was getting Leslie was going to say I was going to reach for it, but I didn't want to. I don't want to bend down on the podcast. It's printed books. It is also you know the words are they're out there, and what you just said about it being choreographed. I'd be very wary of that. Yes, it's what Klaus Schwab say about a cyber polygon, right? A cyber 9/11.
Mm.
I would say be very wary, but very, and we'll close it up with this. I don't know if I've kept 5 minutes longer than I said I would. Is conspiracy theorist. Don't forget that that actual term was coined by the CIA. Do not forget that that is a declassified document. You can find the scanned paper that is from the CIA. So when you realize that that very term is from the Central Intelligence Agency, that alone should, I don't know, really raise your eyebrow. It's not conspiracy theorist, it's critical thinker, right? There's a lot to that.
Rational theories, but it's important to point out it's a government term.
Yes, it's not it's I don't I'm not going to start screaming about it, but it's more than 50 years old. It is a government term. It's not saying it is from there. And don't forget, all throughout human history, and we will wrap it up with this, there's been a series of gatekeepers. And I think the most maybe prominent is the Roman Catholic Church, right? The priests would, you're a good Irishman, you know this. The priests would face the crucifix, they wouldn't face the congregation. They would say it in Latin, and that you, the peasant, were not to read the Bible. You were to come to a priest and write that Martin Luther, the 99 Theses, you could read it on your own. You could, what a crazy idea. You could speak to God your own. You didn't need somebody to interpret it. Human history has been a series of levies and consolidated power and gatekeepers that one by one, sometimes it takes 500 years, sometimes it takes 30 minutes, dissolves, and more and more people can reach the truth and use your own thought processes that God gave you. You're not a conspiracy theorist, you're just a person observing that around you and making your own decisions and not needing somebody to tell you that. But with that, Merry Christmas, Dr. Peter McCullough. And I would say this to the female guests I have. Dr. McCullough is a married man. Please stop texting me. I'm not a married man. He is. We're both Irish. I can be a surrogate, Dr. McCullough.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Tommy's available out there. Tommy, I gotta go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Dr. McCullough, guys, go to the description. Go to his Twitter. Go buy his book with John Lee. Thank you so much, Dr. McCullough. I love you, brother. Until next time.